Conversation with Macedonia. As of Macedonia, that deserves separate topic. What I have with Macedonia is very much based on how entire situation happened to develop, and how I failed to bring forward even that name, yet continuing to exist in a limbo space and on level of collective consciousness, very much contrary to what the entire historic heritage implies. The first breaking point is what is on the ground versus what formally has been introduced and chosen to still be a reference. So I'm going to bring this entire conversation with Macedonia exactly on parameters on which this conversation need to happen. Where is the formal representation of that entire existence? It is as we are talking about some kind of ghost event, yet continuing to exist somewhere in America in face of Martha Stewart, for example, and I really don't know how to think about the entire situation here. That is where you are going to notice Celts and Jewish behind the back of Martha Stewart and the entire concept of that aspect, or that face of America today. Therefore, it is time that people as Martha Stewart or Hillary Clinton, that level of population in America, understand here what makes difference between who they have become and real actual Macedonia. This is vital. It is also vital to be noticed here that without these characters we would not be having that much of that America. We are very much used. So I'm asking you that you finally notice that you have become Americans and that you would be expected to continue to be Americans. Now that is another story here. We all expect that you also notice America in better terms because America deserves to be noticed as America. Really looking forward here that we understand the entire concept of historic heritage of the planet and much more as a planetary subject, so each of the territories become much more relieved to devote more attention to their own territories and not feel that they have lost something, but that they have regained just different positioning within the overall of the planetary functioning. But if today we have awakened, as appear to be that we have awakened this subject of Macedonia, because territories will need to exist on that piece of land as well, they need to continue building their next generations on that territory. They need their protocol on given parameters of time and space. They need their territory returned to their own existences, and if they don't, then you have the entire puzzle of the plateau and of the entire planet being somehow damaged. It is when we are talking about some electric table, which in substance is life energy very much alike, and then you have certain territories that do not emit their energetic existence anymore, because these territories for some time have become literally passive or dead. In many ways, you can say dead, as there are not real identities there that are actually playing that kind of historic existence anymore in terms of life related. And when we talk life related, we talk about individuals and we talk about personalities, and that is where things get a bit more deserving our attention. Where I want to call upon again of the tradition detected here to deny individualism and to favor collective gathering, which would be certainly more indicative to older civilizations that have stopped at some stage to develop further at the stage where individualism gets born on this planet, to the stage where you reach that point that individualism gets born on the planet. My conversation in Macedonia turned to be so extensive to us that I developed it into, subdivided it into sections, that is numbers. So the first two paragraphs were therefore addressing how I find today Macedonia versus reflecting on how it should be. I'm going point through therefore, point 3. We talk therefore about certain characters and functions of these territories as missing from the overall global table of political or related to political function, influencing planetary levels equally, as we talk here in substance about planetary conditioning. And I am very glad that with this work you have managed to notice what was missing and what is still missing there on that energetic charting. While in the same time someone continues to an extent building upon such kind of template and such kind of memory. I'm going to find that rather manipulative than functioning on its own terms, but also in its own size of perceptions and ability to generate perceptions as prerequisite to any efficient management, where suitable construct of characters will also matter. The problem here is that movement of population across the planet is rather a natural event, and it is equally not most correct way to speak about these matters in some kind of permanent terms. I wanted rather to speak about cultural setting and yet allow space for any future individual higher accounts function if something like that occurs, which would not be that much unexpected. In what case scenario, what I want to say here is we are missing the suitable protocol that will allow much more natural step up on certain functions rather than going through painful processes of electorate, which on these territories especially are not just very corruptive, but also male-driven approaches, where it became increasingly hard for a woman to think about serious political career. I will address very low inherited cultural setting on territories that yet have been remembered by the history of having strong female deities and still deliver very strong female energy. The system, however, is simply not opening the doors to this cultural amphitheater, but it is drawing upon the lens some kind of primitive setting, which is not on the same level even as the actual historic heritage of that land. I'm going to find here overwhelming influence by Celts that would be to be blamed here, including the fact that they have adopted Alexander as their son, and you have impression that for 2 millenniums nothing has changed on the planet. As I found myself today in completely same circumstances when I need to defend my son from their intention to claim him as their son. So we are giving birth, as we are giving birth here to community and to cultures, not to actual family. I understand now some kind of blue basin of Atlanteans are having their sight over my son. That is what made me to reinvent monarchy, to look for that family protocol where I'm going to bring my identity and my kids within certain predefined corridors of social charting. Something stopped to function here, how it should have functioned, and the entire region, the entire template, if you want to, the entire energetic table became disturbed and compromised because certain people step up without stepping up, and that is cheating. What is, of course, vital here is to be noticed that they have lost the monarchical protocol here. They have never, I'm going to rather assume, managed to build properly, although very much still living in reminiscence of it, and that is very much paradoxical. These are mega protocols, mega identities. You cannot play here one way or another. Either you live by mega identity or drop it. And if you live by mega identity, then you have to have protocol that's going to recognize and calibrate upon what that mega identity would need. Point 4. It is fact that what happened to be very much part of the mainstream of Mediterranean trading route, and as many surrounding territories and many families within the international community are still very much functioning there by trading culture, which continue to be dominant, but everything else end up being suffocated and rather ignored, either forgotten, or in worst case scenario became subject of trading agreements itself and actually became built within some kind of socialism driven structures of building societies very much by using higher capacities as some kind of energetic burning energy, which goes in completely opposite direction, extreme, where these identities end up being treated as ingredients in industrial production and what becomes called economy entirely, and that is what populace likes very much. Well, we have spending our lives in centuries and millenniums burning upon delivering the best of our talents and dedications for the benefit of humanity. We still get the attitude from the public. They still prefer to see themselves standing above the God-given talent, to call themselves gods instead, if they cannot be anything else more specific. My entire work is discussing and arguing how profoundly that is undermining the entire concept of creation of this realm, and what is in substance this realm all about, what in substance is rather stamped mark of this realm, what should be walking accordingly in this realm on principal account. Point 5. In terms of regulating the institution of life itself, from position of accomplished stages of our overall civilizational development, of course, we are not here on a roller coaster, none of us, but we are certainly on never-ending route of ongoing development that cannot be disregarded. You need to be competitive or you will be walked over no matter how far you have been walked over someone else. You're walking over someone else. What I'm talking here, therefore, is about ability of certain territory either to live based on history or to be accepted to be walked over by other houses in respect of monarchical protocol speaking, and have their territory defined on different accounts than historic heritage houses, which on the other side will liberate historic heritage-related subjects to find for themselves different houses where they can deploy their work and their activity. It is not enough even to just declare a house, which you of course have not, but there should not be on place but there should have been on place active tower, incapacity to actually function from there or you are blocking someone's existence. For a very longer period of time you have accepted to play different kind of game under the notion of historic heritage related. However, it will need to be said here, even in case that you do not have intention to continue building the protocol on your own territories, you still have to have in place, from planetary perspective, derived therefore proper conduct employed on territories that would recognize principal houses and would require suitable protocol in place that would not violate their personal integrity and personal freedoms. In that respect, I have to notice that all becomes rather personal matter, and the rest of the population in all of the historic times would be rather just the ambience or the audience, where we again recognize the protocol amphitheater equally as monarchical protocol being the same event. In substance, we can notice again and again the entire institution of nations have not been built from taking collective perspective, but from taking principal identity perspective. In the same way, how are you are going to find solar? We are going to find solar system, for example. Concept of integrity here emerges on parameters of defining the event, the critical event, which is again identity house. I'm going to notice here monarchies are very much natural protocol in the societies, in the way how humanity exists, and everything else is rather enforced in artificial way, comprising out of engaged and enslaved individuals. And these are not bottom individuals, these are top individuals, because we talk about performance here. No one is going to build cage for someone that is not worth the cage. That is how far all this went into wrong direction. The castle, which is life-related event for individuals of certain function, well-defined function, therefore, cannot be called cage for wild animals. And then you hold the flag and then talk about your historical prestige and your historic stamp where you don't have the license house or you have it, yet defined by whom. It is not like you're walking the elephant for the celebration, for the festive, or the Christmas tree. That is another extreme where Europe found itself missing its own history of monarchy, missing to notice what that is. Point 6. So how on earth I speak here about police level of functioning on anything, and also this is another stereotype, as the yellow color is police. No, it is not. It is prince level and it is king level in the previous times, but it is also temple related and territory related, because only when you are related to the territory and the temple in correct terms, you are going to get the character. You're not bringing it on the actual territory of historic relevance, you don't have the right to bring it forward. This would amount similarly as using fire weapons or something. Can we speak about temple categories here in any disconnected mode? That is irritating and that is offensive. It is wasting our time. If you depend on it, well, then you should be much more respectful about the entire situation. First of all, to notice how things are here, where things are actually happening, and where you appear only as a reflection, and to stop replacing the actual happening, the actual, how you call it, kitchen. What's wrong with writing a book of philosophical thinking? Why on earth you don't say philosophical conceptual thinking and the actual generation of the sentiment, of the civilizational sentiment, political sentiment? Why you just don't call it as it is? Why you always use reference to second category of the reality? Can we even call that realm then? then you already sign out from the realm. You already exist in some kind of parallel realm where nothing is real and nothing you can rely on and upon, and that is symptomatic. Point 7. To speak of Macedonia in yellow terms is all of the sudden appears as we would need to talk about Israel with their mega blue star on their flag, not yet exactly being clarified what exactly they're supposed to mean. This is certainly a reference to mega identity. You have reference to star literally, so if you have the national temple attached to political territory, you would know precisely and exactly. We talk here about political governance, philosophical governance, or both, or eventually none, by the force of other matters, so exist as second reference. Yet, as a secret reference. Yet it will need to be noticed now in totally different context the meaning on that Macedonian mega flag as well. So we talk here about mega identities and eventually mega family on territorial deploy. And because it is about political flag, because we talk about political territory in all of these relevant historic terms that would matter as the story evolves further all over the territories, and if we are talking about the missing puzzle, we talk about play that matters and defines the space and time rather than when we talk about some numbers, collective therefore. Point 8. I have recognized the impact of identity in my work not as a question of physical presence, but as a matter of the entire human dimension. So here I want to avoid discussing Sumerians or Anunnakis or Babylonians, at least for now, as I want to recognize actual functioning of the human society on very specific set of values. Each time you split things to physical big people and physically little people, you just lose the entire concept of protocol human itself, and that is rather annoying, as it is as I have to take it into consideration while you don't have to. Do we have today such issues on ground of bioextremisms? We don't. Well then, let's move on. We rather have problem of Hollywood today playing Land of Devils upon the for some time employed serum for youth and energetic appearance. That is our problem of today, the social affairs. And today America does not have right to speak from the above, because that is not where devils walk. I'm going to say again, let's notice what is the real size of the issues today. That is not just protocol human, but the conduct of human, of course, or what human is supposed to be, versus what human cannot be in all of the times, not just the height. In all of the terms, not just the height. Point 9. Therefore, we have our question for today, the meaning of big mega flags of Israel and Macedonia. Mega people, giants, forget about it. It is not going to answer our question. That is political competence, not some kind of circus environment there. There were also giant dinosaurs in a given time, so what that has to do with our specific question? We are talking political functioning here, not physical circus function. Therefore, it would be about mind, not about body. Point number 1. Point 2. When you talk in political terms about mega identity, you talk territory as well. You talk territory under jurisdiction or under influence. You talk kingdom. So what is that kingdom we are talking about, and what are these territories we are talking about? Appears to me we talk about mother and son. You might call that metaphysics, or I might call that metaphysics, but it's not going to solve the fact that we exist in real terms and everything should function in real terms. I will talk here about the actual imperial subjects that would therefore exist within given territory as imperial territory. The fact that they have been recorded within the political nomenclature of a given time indicates that they have been still very active at that given time. That is why I'm not going to find here that much Alexander happening in Babylon or going in Babylon. I'm going to notice Alexander going in Macedonia, eventually even to conquest Macedonia, and declaring Macedonia as his kingdom. That is where you set the flag, and that is going to explain to me why Macedonia has become that much yellow all of a sudden. Because it has become taken over by the Yellow King is the answer. Now that is completely different story. To have a yellow star is not going to be that much of a present by Santa Claus. It is symbolizing a completely different situation here. Also, you find that collective sharing of power out there to various gods and multiple deities all of a sudden get erased and became a matter of not one god but one king. And then, of course, I'm going to notice the blue star of Mother sitting in Israel, which would certainly hold her son on the leash enough and would not allow him to play any kind of PlayStation games, should I say in present terms language, but to be much more sober and much more responsible. To the present days, we have these two energies on the planet in some rather conflicting positioning of what is regulative versus what is overspoiled, indulged lifestyle. Let's notice that as well. That also explains why Olympia would have square chin of Babylon and why she would be a blue flag of Babylon in substance. And I have to take religion out of the equation here because that is ancient territory, and let's be clear, in ancient times there was no such thing as a religion. There would have been races and tribes that would make a difference on territories, and that would have been recorded. Point 10. Now why Babylon is blue? Because the North Pole is blue, so it is sliding from North Pole as initial kingdom event. It is reaching Babylon, creating certain stronghold, developing to certain levels, move further. Let's notice that we talk about something far bigger here, about the blue basin of overall conceptual philosophical thinking in all of the previous times as well, which therefore brings us again to more specific points, as for example, if we want to reach Israel here, where I'm going to notice we talk about Mother Mary, although the reference is to Queen, yet nowhere explained which Queen. Whatever we call that woman, we talk about Mother. So if you talk about Alexander in Macedonia, then that would be Olympia. My other theory was that that would be second son Jesus, but we miss the matrix, the mother here. So I draw the absolute setting here as the notion of matrix, house, kingdom, where accordingly would be not only king but also queen mother. And why I need that is because this work needs that. Accordingly, it would be mother and son, it would be Mary and Jesus. Yes, correct, it will be Mary and Jesus. And then we have the other son being Alexander. Olympia would have two sons, therefore Jesus and Alexander. Now we have answered what is Israel and what is Macedonia. Point 11. And then I cannot forget India here as well. Yet when I think about India, I don't find India in historic times enough political. India is completely wasted into the dimension of life itself, an entire concept of some kind of universal platform. India is much more looking into the sky than on earth, and what I am talking about here are strongly defined and profiled political imperial subjects. India does not allow you to think about politics in some kind of commanding ways. It is always there to remind you that life is about everything else as well. It is more like that kind of phenomenon of living energy that would be a mother, house, mother to a mother or father. So grandmother, although India can be a good grandfather as well. I mean, there is some potential there. I tend to think of India in grandmother terms because my grandmother of my father's side of Serbia was very much reminding me of, and her name given certainly suggests reference to bloodline, original, yes, with Celtic elements, but then what we would be without Celtics around in the European plateau that has been declared officially as Euro-India. It is another question how far India learned to be a grandfather to someone. Yet I will never make enough difference, probably, between territories to such specifics. And I will notice that there also Pakistan as well, very much troubled. And I will notice that India managed to develop solid army at some point of time and even atomic bomb. What I have not noticed enough is building societies in more serious manner, but still playing some force of natural development. And these are two different forces that one need to drive in accordance of its own idea of what kind of society they want to be. Again, to the extent that we find India very politically ambitious in recent times, We would find ourselves monitoring and noticing the civilization itself, because any aim to appear as influential in international political stages would invite enough curiosity about the way how you build your own societies. You bring yourself on the international stage, you bring your people on the international stages, and you bring in package the way how they think, their mental strength, or how easy they have become part of the overwhelming majority of over-corrupted world, but then you are that historic heritage of advanced mental dimension. Most of the old societies are simply not ready to lead our civilization into future, because future should be made of better answers. Future always does have component of idealism, because compromise our intention to improve things, not just in mechanical way, but in the way how we think about various matters and various issues. Point 12. I'm going to talk about permanency today, and permanent is the planet as well. These are the most principal concepts that we should talk about. Here I find Alexander, not as Alexander the Conqueror, but Alexander the son, that will need to be protected and looked after and reminded of what kind of formation he needs to keep. I'm going to find Jesus as another son rather than Atlantis, that will need to be constantly talked with and constantly be with in terms of providing another protective shield to another person that might be vulnerable if not protected properly. This is critical. For me, this is where I don't compromise anything. Looking after kids is the most important thing, and that is why we talk today about protectorates, about United Nations existing in such promise, about protection. We are not talking about regulating things without talking about protecting things. Again, we talk about energies here, about mature approaches, not about physical charade of anything really. I talk about definition of protocols on various geographic territories upon the presence of specific bloodlines. I have done plenty of talking on my work and have pulled out women at some point of general significance for the overall functioning of our societies. But if we are going to talk about some kind of political and international settings within the time and space, then I would bring on stage further standardization in terms of, for example, lifestyle and various approaches to lifestyle and way of thinking will need to be differing as a persons, not only as genders, and especially when it comes to higher principles, counts what will need to be used as some kind of reference in all the times. Of course, we would find much more specific description of characters in times, and that would bound territories forever. Finding fraternity society ruling the planet was a nightmare, and that is also what it meant to leave Jesus somewhere in Middle East and Alexander somewhere on West, unattended, and that is the consequence of killing imperial mother and leaving imperial kids on their own somewhere in Rome, from where adversity became launched. Point 13. Considering the fact that we talk here about principal bloodlines, I'm going to notice the symbol of sun also as a reference to what at year 0 became critical point, where it was marked some mega event. Everyone is talking about some kind of natural disaster, but I would recognize that at that time can be recognized certain historic identities emerging in Middle East and North African region. Actually, the planetary civilization reaching momentum where you have emerging practice of speaking to the people or speaking to general population, which in previous times would not be exactly exploited sufficiently. Today, that is one of the most important expressions of political identity, where the entire institution of governing very much is based upon certain perceived function of speaking to people, although in substance is not exactly happening. However, we build our civilization today under presumption that we have stage from where leaders speak to people. It has become that much accepted civilizational paradigm. However, it is to be noticed that at earlier beginning of civilization, that was not exactly neither the practice, neither in the promise, so there is a certain stage of overall development where it has been reached that kind of a situation, that event where a person would stand up and start talking as a leader to the general population. That would have been time of Jesus, And in the same time, approximately, in that time we have emerging two mega flags here on the territories, being Macedonian and Israel, which would suggest active political subjects. And I'm going to argue here today would be very much based on the ground of speaking to the population as a political subject. That is from where it would be reference to sun, because light represents enlightenment, which means talking to people. It might be that it would have been started in Egypt because there is enough evidence that the sun symbol emerged actually in Egypt with one of the pharaohs. What I'm going to make out of this is that in some general perspective, we recognize therefore number one, that we talk here about principal imperial bloodlines, and then we talk about the principal features of principal political bloodline, which has become talking to the population, talking to people. That is what only reference to sun can possibly mean. Jesus himself overnight was nothing short of talking to people. We might talk about practice that become family, some kind of family affair where the sons were talking the function in different parts of the kingdom. Would that not be the history of apostles? Would that not be Jesus and Alexander as two sons? And there would be the third son as well, somewhere as some of the pharaohs of Egypt. So here I'm bringing this kind of trajectory of the actual events that have happened, very much matching the very specific historic event. Very hard to notice here similarity either in symbols or in what these symbols would refer to. If not to principal function. Here I'm going to detect and return again to ancient history when it has been recorded, character as it is Themis, marked as goddess of absolute justice, bringing here a reference to much more serious political perceptions, and I would argue much more mature. That is what brings to me the institution of imperial house of the size of such symbolics, where then I'm going to find sons as a matter of continuation of what would be initially established as house of principality. That is a very important momentum that will need to be noticed here. Point 14. However, we need also to talk about phenomenon no arc that would come very much explanatory on the fact that we found today humanity in some kind of zoo protocol, some kind of farming animals protocol, Disneyland level, which might be explained by necessity to recover humanity after some kind of major cataclysm, although it looks to me more as some kind of deliberate alteration of the standard code of human that would not be that much of standard. So that just triggered this kind of artistry with certain political element and intention to devalue certain codes for the sake of competition. This is where I'm arguing today it's very wrong to consider one planet as a place of competition, because in substance everyone is losing. We have to redefine the entire human protocol on this planet and the way how we understand our living. There is too much negative energy and hatred which may well would be triggered by the character of certain animal identities even. I would go here with how you look is what you are. Speaking of animals, and if some of animals look how they look, they bring exactly such character as well. And then you reflect that in human. You bring that much different characters, and that is making harder to manage the entire human dimension. In substance, I will argue here that our human is very positive identity, but either someone felt bored here and started to play around the theater, literally genetic theater therefore, or we talk about also some kind of political intention to devalue or both in the process. Point 15. Not all of the above subjects mentioned are related to Macedonia. However, to the extent that Macedonia still somehow get marked by Alexander the Great, and that is very close to time zero when Jesus appears and when major shift in civilizational protocol emerges, I found couple of associated subjects appropriate to be mentioned in this occasion, so we understand totally here the gravity of that territory at that historic point of time. As much as today we appear to have perfected the human consciousness, we have not managed to resolve, hardly even to recognize, any of the most vital issues on the planet, let aside to take the most correct approach to the various issues, and that continues to be an ongoing problem. What is the nature of humanity, or the fabric of humanity, as of what today ended to call itself humanity?